that my family came here legally, but what she was hoping to do was try to call me a hypocrite for believing.
In the ever-churning kaleidoscope of American daytime television, few platforms wield as much moral influence or stir up as much fiery debate as The View. It's not just a talk show. It's a cultural courtroom where politicians, celebrities, and activists alike are summoned to plead their case before millions. In this arena, opinions aren't just shared. They're dissected, applauded, and often weaponized. But occasionally, that righteous spotlight turns inward, trapping one of its own in a spectacle of their own making. That's precisely what happened to Sunny Hostin. What began as a seemingly harmless verbal jab soon spiraled into a full-blown credibility crisis. With the practiced poise of someone used to cheers from a live audience, Sunny took aim at conservative commentator Tomi Lahren. Her strategy? A biting remark aimed at exposing what she saw as glaring hypocrisy in Tomi's stance on immigration. But rather than challenging Tomi's ideas head-on, Sunny veered into far riskier territory: Ancestry. With a knowing smirk, she rattled off census data she claimed detailed Tomi's family history in America, specifically that they had lived in the U.S. for generations without learning English. The implication? That Tomi's lineage wouldn't meet the very merit-based immigration standards she champions today. It was meant to be a mic drop moment, a clever twist of irony. But instead, it backfired, spectacularly. What Sunny may have intended as a stinging critique of policy quickly morphed into a personal attack that many viewed as petty, presumptive, and laced with its own flavor of bias.
It says Tommy's 3 times great-grandmother had been here for 41 years and still spoke German. She didn't speak English.
It was meant to be a zinger, a clever, cutting jab dressed up in historical trivia. But instead of landing a punch, it ricocheted. Hard. What Sunny Hostin served up was less a mic drop moment and more a misfire cloaked in smugness. The intended target? Tomi Lahren, a conservative firebrand known for her sharp tongue and unshakable composure. But to Sunny's likely dismay, Tomi didn't even have to reach for a comeback. With cool clarity, she laid out her family's history. Norwegian and German immigrants who came to America legally, labored tirelessly, gradually learned the language, and carved out their version of the American dream. The contrast Sunny tried to draw between 19th century legal immigrants and today's complex immigration issues quickly unraveled. Under even a modest amount of scrutiny, the argument crumbled. Not because the topic lacked weight, but because the comparison simply didn't hold. In a move steeped in irony, her attempt to shame someone else's ancestry only served to spotlight her own. Not long ago, Sunny had appeared on Finding Your Roots, the acclaimed PBS series where celebrities trace their lineage. As the cameras rolled and her DNA story unfolded, Sunny, an outspoken advocate for reparations and racial justice, was hit with a truth she clearly hadn't anticipated. Her ancestors were once slave owners. The revelation wasn't just personal. It shook the foundations of a public persona carefully built on progressive ideals, laying bare the complexity and fragility of identity in the spotlight.
Well, turns out she's not as oppressed as she claims she is. She's actually the descendant of slave owners from Europe.
Here was a woman who had spent years seated at the table of moral authority, frequently and fervently calling out historical injustices, denouncing the sins of the past, and demanding accountability from those she deemed complicit. Sunny Hostin had made a brand of it. But when the lens turned inward, what it revealed was a truth too uncomfortable to dismiss. Her own lineage was intertwined with the very oppression she so often condemned. When that revelation aired on Finding Your Roots, Sunny tried to style it off. With a forced laugh and an awkward attempt at levity, she called it interesting, stumbled through a few comments, and quickly pivoted to safer ground. But as anyone who's ever lived online knows, the internet has a memory like an elephant, and far less forgiveness. So when Sunny recently took aim at Tomi Lahren's ancestry, dredging up dusty census records to make a point about immigration and identity, it didn't take long for critics to connect the dots. Within hours, social media lit up like a bonfire. Memes exploded across timelines. Screenshots of Sunny's shocked expression from the PBS reveal were plastered next to her smug remarks about Tomi. The irony was almost cinematic. Commentators had a field day. Political analysts dissected the hypocrisy with surgical precision. Even those on the left, typically Sunny's ideological allies, winced at the obvious contradiction. Because this moment wasn't just about Tomi Lahren, or the immigration debate, or even Ancestry. It was a textbook case of performative outrage crashing headfirst into personal history. In that moment, Sunny Hostin had committed a cardinal sin in today's media landscape, believing herself immune to the very scrutiny she demanded of others.
Well, there is a woman over the weekend who took it upon herself to research my family.
They came to America the right way, legally documented, determined, and committed to building a future within the framework of American law. They didn't arrive to exploit the system, wave foreign flags in protest, or demand exceptions. Tomi Lahren's ancestors, as she calmly explained, embodied the immigrant story America claims to celebrate, one rooted in perseverance, not privilege. Meanwhile, Sunny Hostin scrambled to regain control of the narrative she had so confidently launched. The spin machine kicked into gear. She claimed her comments were misunderstood, that she wasn't attacking immigration itself, just pointing out what she perceived as hypocrisy. But the damage had already been done. The carefully constructed persona of moral clarity had cracked, and what slipped through was something far more familiar. Yet another media elite preaching standards they couldn't themselves uphold. What made it worse, what turned a misstep into a media maelstrom, was the scale of the backlash. It wasn't just conservative voices holding Sunny to account. Moderates, independents, even progressive commentators expressed frustration at seeing meaningful conversations about immigration hijacked by petty personal digs. For many, it was a tipping point. The performance felt tired, out of touch, and embarrassingly self-inflicted. Social media exploded. Commentary came in waves. YouTube creators dissected the exchange, their reaction videos racking up millions of views. Conservative outlets had a field day, gleefully looping clips of Sunny's own ancestry revelation beside her smug attack on Tomi, an ironic montage that practically edited itself. And then came the memes. Endless memes. Sunny's stunned expression. From finding your roots became internet currency, shared, remixed, and memed into digital infamy.
I think it's actually pretty interesting that my husband and I have shared.
Screenshots of Sunny's stunned face, frozen in disbelief on finding your roots, quickly became viral fodder. The internet did what it does best, captioned it with razor-sharp humor. When you realize you owe reparations and queen of self-owns. The memes spread like wildfire, turning an embarrassing moment into a cultural flashpoint. One that perfectly captured the festering frustrations so many Americans feel toward mainstream media personalities. This wasn't just a slip of the tongue, or a poorly timed joke. It was a full-blown unraveling. Sunny Hostin didn't merely lose a debate, she lost credibility. And for many viewers, it felt like long overdue justice served cold. Because for years, shows like The View have operated inside a carefully insulated bubble. A bubble where applause lines pass for insight, where contrarian opinions are treated like blasphemy, and where complex societal issues are boiled down into neatly packaged partisan sound bites. But outside that studio, the real world is paying attention. The bubble is beginning to leak, if not burst altogether. Viewers are waking up, seeing the cracks in the performance, realizing that many of the loudest moral arbiters on daytime TV are just that, performers. Scripted, safe, selling indignation, dressed as commentary. So when someone like Sunny fumbles this spectacularly, it's not just entertaining, it's eye-opening. Because her attack on Tomi Lahren didn't happen in a vacuum. What happened on The View wasn't just an awkward misstep, it was a symptom of something deeper, something systemic. It exposed a rot that's been festering behind the polished smiles and scripted indignation of mainstream media. The unchecked arrogance of media elites who believe they can moralize to millions while conveniently sidestepping their own contradictions. And when that illusion shatters, the fallout is nothing short of spectacular. Tomi Lahren didn't need to rant or revel in the moment. She didn't have to gloat or clap back with venom. She simply held her ground, calmly laid out the facts, and let the truth speak louder than outrage. In doing so, she didn't just win a debate. She struck a chord with viewers who are exhausted by the sanctimony saturating their screens every day. Meanwhile, Sunny Hostin has no doubt launched into damage control mode. Carefully crafted statements will be released. Social media accounts will be curated with precision. She'll rely on the comforting applause of the View's studio audience to resuscitate her image. But the damage? It's already done, because millions of people didn't just witness a poorly executed attack. They saw something raw, something unfiltered. They saw the real Sunny, not the confident commentator framed in studio lights, but a vulnerable figure, caught in the crossfire of her own contradictions. And once that mask slips, it's almost impossible to put it back on. This wasn't about one offhand comment. It was a live demonstration of the glass house principle in action. And when the first stone was thrown, the entire facade began to crack, on national television and across the internet, where nothing is ever truly forgotten. So, what do you think? Was Sunny Hostin's jab at Tomi Lahren a desperate lunge that finally laid bare her hypocrisy? Or was it simply a clumsy blunder blown out of proportion by an unforgiving audience? And beyond that, are media figures losing their grip on credibility because of moments like this? Let's unpack it. Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and if you found this breakdown eye-opening, don't forget to like, subscribe, and tap that notification bell. Trust me, you won't want to miss the next time the glass walls come crashing down.